The Galactic Council, representing the most powerful alien civilizations, had long dismissed the young upstart species from the third planet of a minor star system. Humanity's primitive technology and fractured nations were seen as no threat to the advanced galactic order. But that complacency was about to be shattered. High above the swirling blue-green orb of Earth, the opulent transport ship of the Galactic Ambassador glided silently through the void. Its burly Krellian security guards lounged at their posts, their grip on their energy rifles relaxed. They had little reason to be on alert. The space around the Sol system was considered a sleepy backwater, hardly worth the attention of the mighty galactic powers. Suddenly, a series of intense energy readings flashed on the ship's scanners. Before the guards could react, a volley of brilliant plasma bolts streaked out of the darkness, slamming into the transport's flank. Atmosphere vented in crackling bursts as the stricken vessel lurched and spun, its elegant lines marred by scorch marks and ragged holes. Inside, the ambassador and her aides were thrown violently against the bulkheads. "What is happening?" The ambassador shrieked, clutching her bleeding head. One of the security guards, his armor scorched, barked a response. "We're under attack. Unknown hostiles, deploying countermeasures." Desperately, the transport ship's systems tried to compensate, but the damage was too severe. The ambassador watched in horror as the readouts flashed crimson. The reactor was destabilizing, the hull integrity collapsing. She braced herself as the deck tilted at a sickening angle. "Mayday! Mayday! This is Galactic Transport Solaris. We are under attack and suffering catastrophic systems failure. Requesting immediate." The guard's transmission dissolved into static as the ship's communication array went dark. Moments later, the Solaris disintegrated in a blinding flash, its remains tumbling end over end through the void. Nearby sensor platforms, operated by the primitive human space agencies, registered the event and immediately relayed the data to the highest levels of Earth's military and political leadership. In the underground nerve center of the Pentagon, the alert klaxons wailed to life. Dozens of analysts and officers snapped to attention, their eyes glued to the real-time tactical displays. General Michael Johnson, the newly appointed head of the United States Space Command, strode into the command center, his brow furrowed in concern. "Report," he barked. A young lieutenant hurried to his side. "Sir, we just received a distress signal from a galactic transport ship in our outer perimeter. It was attacked and destroyed. Initial analysis indicates the use of some kind of advanced energy weapons, beyond anything we've encountered before." Johnson's eyes narrowed. "Were there any survivors?" The lieutenant shook her head. "No, sir, the ship was completely destroyed. We're still collecting telemetry, but it looks like the attack was swift and devastating." The general's jaw tightened. "Damn, this is a serious escalation. Have you notified the President and the Joint Chiefs?" "Yes, sir. They're on secure conference line, awaiting your update." Johnson nodded grimly. "Patch me through." On the main view screen, the stern faces of the President, the Secretary of Defense, and the military service chiefs appeared. Johnson saluted sharply. "Mr. President, Joint Chiefs, we have a developing situation." The President spoke first, his voice grave. "General, your people just informed me that one of our galactic allies has been attacked and destroyed near our space. What can you tell me?" "Sir, approximately 20 minutes ago, one of the Galactic Ambassador's transport ships was ambushed and destroyed in the outer reaches of the Sol system. Our sensors detected the use of powerful energy weapons beyond our current capabilities. There were no survivors." An older Air Force general leaned forward. "Do we have any leads on the perpetrators?" Johnson shook his head. "Negative, sir. The attack was swift and decisive. We're still analyzing the data, but it appears the hostiles were able to strike without warning and completely overwhelm the galactic vessel's defenses." The President's brow furrowed with concern. "This is a serious breach of galactic security. Have you alerted the Galactic Council?" "Not yet, sir. I wanted to brief you and the Joint Chiefs first before reaching out to our galactic counterparts. Given the sensitive nature of our relationship with the galactic powers, I wanted to ensure we presented a unified front. The President nodded slowly. Very well, General. Coordinate with the State Department and prepare an official communique. Make it clear that we condemn this act of aggression in the strongest possible terms, and that we stand ready to assist in any investigation or retaliation. Johnson saluted again. Understood, Mr. President. We'll get on it immediately. As the conference line went dark, the general turned to his staff. All right, people, let's get to work. I want a full tactical analysis of this attack, cross-referenced with any intelligence we have on galactic military capabilities and potential adversaries. Time is of the essence. Our galactic allies are not going to be happy about this, and we need to get out in front of it. The command center erupted into a flurry of activity as the analysts sprung into action. General Johnson watched them grimly, his mind racing. Whatever had happened out there, it was a game changer. The galactic powers had never faced a threat like this before, and it seemed that humanity's role in the galactic stage was about to become much more prominent, whether they were ready for it or not. The Galactic Council chambers were in an uproar. Ambassadors from dozens of starfaring civilizations shouted and gesticulated, their usually composed demeanors shattered by the news of the brazen attack on one of their own. At the center of the chaos stood the imposing figure of Grand Arbiter Xyloth, the presiding leader of the council. He raised a clawed hand, demanding silence. Order. We will have order. Gradually, the clamor subsided, and the assembled delegates turned their attention to the Grand Arbiter. Distinguished colleagues, Xyloth began, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. As you are all now aware, one of our diplomatic transport vessels, the Solaris, was attacked and destroyed near the remote Sol system. This is an unacceptable and grievous violation of our laws and treaties. A Krellan ambassador, his reptilian features twisted in fury, slammed his fist on the table. We must retaliate immediately. The primitives of that backwater planet must be punished for this outrage. Xyloth raised a hand, silencing the Krellan. Patience, Ambassador. While I share your outrage, we must proceed with caution. The details of this attack are still unclear. We do not yet know the full capabilities of the humans, nor the true motives behind this act. A Lith Aseri diplomat spoke up, her voice laced with concern. Grand Arbiter, we have long dismissed the humans as a minor species, unworthy of our attention. But if they possess the means to destroy one of our ships with such ease, then we have gravely underestimated them. Xyloth nodded slowly. Indeed, Counselor Tiana. This development is most troubling. I have already dispatched our finest investigative team to the Sol system to gather intelligence and ascertain the facts. The Krellan ambassador scowled. And what shall we do in the meantime? Sit idle while the humans mock our might. We will do nothing rash, Xyloth replied firmly. Until we have a clearer understanding of the situation, any hasty action could provoke a wider conflict that none of us can afford. For now, we must remain vigilant and prepare our defenses. The humans have demonstrated a capacity for violence that we cannot ignore. Across the galaxy, within the shadowy halls of the Galactic Intelligence Directorate, a team of seasoned operatives pored over the sensor data from the Solaris incident. At their head was Dr. Michael Johnson, a brilliant xenobiologist-turned-intelligence analyst. Johnson's brow was furrowed in concentration as he studied the holographic reconstructions of the attack. Fascinating, he murmured, tracing the trajectory of the plasma bolts with a slender finger. The speed and precision of these weapons is beyond anything in our database. One of his subordinates, a grizzled Krellan veteran, grunted. So the humans have some fancy toys. That doesn't explain how they managed to catch our transport completely off guard. Johnson shook his head. It's not just the weapons, Grull. Look at the attack profile. Surgical strikes, coordinated movements, no wasted firepower. This was the work of highly trained, disciplined combatants, not just lucky shots. Grull's reptilian eyes narrowed. You're suggesting the humans possess advanced military capabilities we were unaware of. Precisely. Johnson tapped a command, and the holographic display shifted, revealing detailed schematics and sensor logs. Our initial scans of the human homeworld indicated a primitive, fractured civilization with limited technological development. But these new data points paint a very different picture. The Krellin leaned in, studying the information intently. Specialized ground forces, aerospace defense networks, covert operations. This is no backwater rabble. Johnson nodded grimly. No, my friend. It appears we have gravely underestimated the humans, and that mistake may have cost us dearly. He turned to face the assembled team, his expression steely. Gentlemen, our mission is clear. We must uncover the full extent of human military capabilities, by any means necessary. The Galactic Council must be made aware of this threat before it's too late. Grohl bared his sharp teeth in a predatory grin. At last, a worthy challenge. I live to serve the Council. When do we leave? Johnson matched the Krellin's fierce expression. Immediately. Time is not on our side. As the team dispersed to prepare for their covert expedition to Earth, the xenobiologist-turned-spymaster allowed himself a grim smile. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson. Never underestimate the tenacity and resolve of humanity. Sergeant James Beckett adjusted the strap of his bulky tactical vest as he stepped out of the shadows, his keen eyes scanning the dimly lit warehouse. The Galactic team's ambush had been sloppy, their attempts to conceal their presence woefully inadequate. For highly trained special operators, they had made rookie mistakes. Beckett allowed himself a faint smirk. Amateurs. Silently, he moved forward, his footsteps barely audible over the soft hum of the building's environmental systems. Years of experience had honed his senses to a razor's edge, attuning him to the slightest disturbances in his surroundings. As he reached the center of the cavernous space, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Reacting instinctively, he dropped to one knee, his assault rifle raised and trained on the source. 3 hulking figures, clad in what appeared to be advanced combat armor, emerged from behind a stack of crates, energy rifles leveled at Beckett. The SAS surgeon's finger tightened on the trigger, but he hesitated. Something wasn't right. These aliens, for all their technological advantages, moved with an awkward, unnatural fluidity, as if unaccustomed to their own bodies. Then he noticed it, the subtle shimmer in the air around them, the barely perceptible distortion of light. Cloaking devices. These were no ordinary soldiers. Beckett allowed a faint grin to cross his lips. Well, trying to play hide-and-seek, are we? Without warning, he opened fire, his assault rifle spitting a hail of high-velocity rounds. The cloaked figures staggered, their shields flickering as they attempted to return fire. But Beckett's aim was true, and in a matter of seconds, 2 of the aliens crumpled to the ground, their armor pierced. The remaining Galactic operative lunged forward, its energy rifle blazing. Beckett dove to the side, feeling the searing heat of the plasma bolt as it seared past him. Tucking into a roll, he came up firing, emptying the magazine into the alien's chest. It jerked and collapsed, its cloaking device sputtering and dying. Beckett surveyed the scene, his heart rate steady, his breathing calm. He'd faced far worse in his years with the SAS. Methodically, he checked the fallen aliens, confirming that they were indeed dead. No chances taken. These were dangerous foes. Retrieving the compact datapad from one of the bodies, Beckett began searching through the aliens' files and logs. His brow furrowed as he studied the information, his mind racing. So, you're not just some bumbling tourists, he murmured. You're here for me. Back at the Galactic Intelligence Directorate headquarters, Dr. Michael Johnson and his team pored over the latest intelligence reports, their expressions a mix of alarm and grim determination. This is worse than we thought, Johnson said, his voice tight. The humans not only possess advanced weaponry, but also highly skilled special operations forces capable of countering our own elite units. Grohl, the Krellin intelligence officer, bared his teeth in a snarl. Unacceptable. We should have crushed these primitives when we had the chance. Johnson raised a hand, silencing the Krellin. Hindsight is 20/20ths, my friend. The fact is, we grossly underestimated the humans. Now we must adapt, and quickly, if we are to contain this threat. He tapped a command, and a holographic display shifted, showcasing the tactical data from the failed ambush. Our initial team was no match for a single human operative. Their speed, their reflexes, their combat acumen, it's beyond anything we've encountered before. Grohl studied the images, his reptilian eyes narrowed. Impressive. But surely our forces can be better prepared next time. Johnson shook his head. I'm not sure that's enough, Grohl. These humans, they fight with a level of skill and determination that is unsettling. They do not fear us, and they will not back down. The Krellin snorted. Then we will simply overwhelm them with superior numbers and firepower. The Galactic Council will not tolerate this insolence. That may be exactly what they want. Johnson mused, his gaze distant. You saw how easily they neutralized our operatives. Frontal assaults may not be the answer here. Grohl opened his mouth to argue, but Johnson raised a hand, silencing him. No, we must think differently. These humans, they fight like cornered predators, resourceful, adaptable, and utterly relentless. We cannot afford to underestimate them again. The xenobiologist turned to face his team, his expression grave. Gentlemen, we have our work cut out for us. I want every scrap of intelligence we can gather on these special air service forces. Their tactics, their equipment, their training. Leave no stone unturned. The Galactic Council must be made to understand the true nature of this threat. As the team scrambled to carry out their orders, Johnson allowed himself a moment of contemplation. The humans, it seemed, were full of surprises, and he had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council chambers were deathly silent as Dr. Michael Johnson delivered his grim report. The usually composed delegates sat transfixed, their expressions a mix of shock and trepidation. Johnson's voice was measured, but the underlying tension was palpable. Our initial reconnaissance mission to the human homeworld was a catastrophic failure. The team I dispatched was neutralized with ruthless efficiency by a single human operative, a member of their elite Special Air Service forces. A murmur of dismay rippled through the assembled ambassadors. The Krellin representative slammed his fist on the table, his scales flaring in anger. Unacceptable. This cannot be allowed to stand. We must respond with overwhelming force. Johnson raised a placating hand. I understand your outrage, Ambassador, but I must caution against any hasty actions. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that we clearly did not anticipate, and rushing headlong into conflict could have devastating consequences. Grand Arbiter Xyloth, his expression grave, held up a clawed hand, silencing the Krellin. Dr. Johnson, your report is deeply troubling. What else have you learned about these SAS forces? Johnson tapped a command, and the central holographic display sprang to life, showcasing a wealth of tactical data and intelligence gathered by his team. Our investigation has uncovered a wealth of disturbing information. The humans possess a highly specialized military branch, trained in a wide array of combat disciplines, from advanced weapons handling to covert infiltration and sabotage. He zoomed in on the profile of Sergeant Beckett, the SAS operative who had single-handedly defeated the Galactic infiltration team. This individual, Sergeant James Beckett, is a prime example of their capabilities. His combat skills, his situational awareness, his ability to adapt to unexpected threats. It far exceeds anything we've encountered among our own special forces. The Aseri diplomat, Counselor Tayana, leaned forward, her brow furrowed in concern. But how is this possible? The humans are a relatively young species, with a fractured political landscape and limited technological development. How have they managed to cultivate such formidable warriors? Johnson shook his head. That is the crux of the problem. Counselor, our previous assessments of the humans were woefully inaccurate. They possess a level of military sophistication and strategic thinking that we simply did not anticipate. He paused, his expression grim. And I fear that we have only scratched the surface. Our intelligence suggests that the SAS is but one component of a larger, highly capable human military structure, one that has likely been developing in the shadows, beyond our ability to detect. The Krellin ambassador leaned forward, his reptilian eyes narrowed. Then we must act quickly to neutralize this threat before it grows beyond our control. The Galactic Council cannot afford to have such a volatile, unpredictable element in our midst. Siloth raised a hand, silencing the Krellin once more. While I share your concerns, Ambassador, we must tread carefully. The humans have demonstrated a willingness to defend their interests with ferocity. Any overt aggression on our part could provoke a wider conflict that none of us can afford. The Grand Arbiter turned his gaze to Johnson. Dr. Johnson, your team has done exemplary work in uncovering the true nature of the human threat. But I must ask, do you have a recommendation for how we should proceed? Johnson took a deep breath, his mind racing. Grand Arbiter, I believe the wisest course of action is to pursue a diplomatic solution, at least initially. We must attempt to engage the humans in a dialogue, to understand their motivations and their grievances. Only then can we hope to find a peaceful resolution that preserves the stability of the galactic order. He paused, his expression hardening. However, I must also caution that we cannot afford to let our guard down. The humans have proven themselves to be formidable adversaries, and we must be prepared to defend ourselves should diplomacy fail. Siloth nodded slowly. A prudent course of action. Very well, Dr. Johnson. You and your team will spearhead the diplomatic efforts with the humans. But be advised, the Galactic Council will not tolerate any further attacks on our interests. Should the humans prove unwilling to cooperate, we will have no choice but to respond with the full might of the galactic forces. As the chamber erupted in a flurry of hushed discussions, Dr. Johnson allowed himself a small, grim smile. The humans, it seemed, had finally captured the attention of the galactic powers. Now, the real challenge began. The skies above Earth were alight with the exchange of weapons fire as the massive Galactic Expeditionary Force descended upon the planet. Sleek, angular warships unleashed a relentless barrage of plasma bolts and particle beams, targeting the human military's key strategic sites and infrastructure. But to the Galactic Commander's growing dismay, the humans were not rolling over in the face of their superior firepower. Integrated aerospace defense networks, coordinated by the elite SAS forces, lashed back with a devastating array of missile batteries, laser-guided munitions, and specialized electromagnetic pulse weapons. General Michael Johnson watched the unfolding battle with a grim expression, his knuckles white, as he gripped the edges of the tactical display. "Status report," he barked. A young lieutenant hurried to his side, her face flushed with adrenaline. "Sir, we're holding our own, but the galactic forces are pressing the attack. Their ships are taking heavy damage, but they're not letting up." Johnson's eyes narrowed. "And our ground forces? SAS teams have infiltrated the galactic staging areas and are disrupting their supply lines and troop movements. We're also seeing coordinated guerrilla strikes across multiple fronts." The general nodded, a flicker of grim satisfaction crossing his features. "Good. Keep me apprised of any developments." As the lieutenant rushed back to her station, Johnson turned his attention to the main display, his mind racing. The galactic powers had clearly underestimated the resilience and adaptability of humanity's military, but their sheer numerical advantage and technological superiority were starting to take their toll. "We can't keep this up forever," he muttered under his breath. "We need to find a way to break the stalemate, or we'll be overwhelmed." Across the galaxy, in the Galactic Council chambers, the ambassadors were in a state of growing panic. Reports of the devastating battle for Earth had shaken them to the core, shattering their long-held beliefs about the primitive nature of humanity. Grand Arbiter Siloth's voice was grim as he addressed the assembled delegates. "This is a dire situation, my friends. Our expeditionary force has been met with far greater resistance than we anticipated. The humans are proving to be formidable opponents, capable of inflicting heavy casualties on our most advanced units. The Krellin ambassador slammed his fist on the table, his reptilian features twisted in a snarl. Then we must escalate our response. Deploy our most powerful weapons, crush these upstart humans once and for all. Siloth raised a clawed hand, silencing the Krellin. I fear that may no longer be an option, Ambassador. Our forces are sustaining significant losses, and we risk expending our resources to no avail. The humans' ability to adapt and counterattack is unprecedented. Counselor Tayana, the Aseri diplomat, spoke up, her voice tinged with worry. Grand Arbiter, you cannot be suggesting that we abandon our efforts to subdue the humans. The implications of such a failure would be catastrophic for the Galactic Order. Siloth's expression was grave. I do not make this suggestion lightly, Counselor, but we must consider the possibility that a direct military confrontation may no longer be the wisest course of action. The Krellin ambassador let out a derisive snort. So we are to simply surrender to these primitive barbarians. I will not accept such a disgrace. Siloth fixed the Krellin with a steely gaze. There are other options, Ambassador, options that may allow us to resolve this conflict without further bloodshed. But I warn you, if we fail to find a diplomatic solution, the consequences could be dire, not just for the humans, but for the entire galactic civilization. The chamber fell silent, the weight of Siloth's words hanging in the air. The Grand Arbiter turned to address his aides, his voice low and urgent. Summon Dr. Johnson and his team immediately. We must explore every avenue of diplomacy for the sake of our future. Back on Earth, General Johnson stared grimly at the tactical displays, his mind racing. The battle was intensifying, and he knew that his forces could not sustain this level of attrition for much longer. They needed a breakthrough, a decisive edge that could turn the tide of the conflict. As he pondered their next move, a message flashed on his comm unit, a secure channel from the Galactic Council. Johnson's brow furrowed in confusion, but he quickly opened the line. General Johnson, this is Grand Arbiter Siloth. We need to talk. Sergeant James Beckett crouched low, his assault rifle braced against his shoulder as he peered through the scope. The massive galactic warship loomed overhead, its sleek, angular hull bristling with weapon emplacements. Narrowing his eyes, Beckett surveyed the defenses, his mind racing. This was no simple smash-and-grab mission. The stakes were far higher than anything he and his SAS squad had faced before. All right, listen up, he murmured into his comm, his voice low and intense. We've got one shot at this. Come silence from here on out. Move quick and silent, and watch each other's backs. Understood. A chorus of affirmatives crackled in his earpiece, and Beckett nodded, his expression grim. Good. Let's do this. Silently, the SAS team slipped through the shadows, their specialized stealth gear rendering them all but invisible to the galactic ship's sensors. Beckett led the way, his keen senses attuned to the slightest disturbance, his finger poised on the trigger. As they reached the towering hull of the warship, Beckett gestured to his squad, and they quickly began scaling the smooth surface, their magnetic boots and climbing harnesses allowing them to ascend with ease. Reaching the upper decks, Beckett paused, holding up a clenched fist. His team froze, and he strained his senses, listening intently. The faint hum of the ship's engines, the muted chatter of the galactic crew. There, a patrol approaching their position. With a silent hand signal, Beckett directed his squad to take cover, melting into the shadows as the galactic guards passed by, oblivious to their presence. Once the patrol had moved on, Beckett led his team forward, their progress slow but methodical. Finally, they reached the command deck, the heavily guarded nerve center of the galactic warship. Beckoning his squad to take up positions, Beckett took a deep breath and raised his rifle, sighting the first of the galactic officers. In a matter of seconds, the SAS team unleashed a barrage of precise, silent shots, neutralizing the bridge crew with ruthless efficiency. As the last of the Galactic commanders crumpled to the deck, Beckett quickly moved to the central control console, his fingers flying over the unfamiliar interface. Behind him, his team secured the bridge, eliminating any remaining resistance. Grinning, Beckett toggled the ship's communications, his voice booming across the open channel. "This is Sergeant Beckett of the SAS. We now have control of your command ship. Stand down and prepare to negotiate, or we will be forced to take more drastic action." Back on Earth, General Michael Johnson stared in stunned silence as the Galactic warship's systems flickered and went dark, its powerful weapons falling silent. Beside him, the young lieutenant's eyes were wide with disbelief. "Sir, Sergeant Beckett and his team, they've seized control of the Galactic flagship." Johnson allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. "Well, I'll be damned. The lads have certainly got the Galactic Council's attention now." He reached for the secure comm unit, his expression hardening. "Patch me through to the Galactic Council. It's time we had a little chat." In the Galactic Council chambers, the assembled ambassadors erupted into a cacophony of dismayed shouts as Beckett's message rang out. Grand Arbiter Tyloth raised a clawed hand, silencing the room. "Enough," he roared, his usually stoic demeanor shaken. This is an outrage. How dare these humans seize one of our most advanced warships?" The Krellin ambassador leaned forward, his reptilian eyes gleaming with a savage triumph. "Finally, the humans have shown their true colors. They are nothing but savages, unfit to join our civilized order. We must crush them, before they pose an even greater threat." Xyloth fixed the Krellin with a withering glare. "Ambassador, now is not the time for rash decisions. We must tread carefully. This human, Sergeant Beckett, has demonstrated a level of skill and audacity that we cannot ignore." Counselor Tyana's brow was furrowed with concern. "Grand Arbiter, you cannot be suggesting that we negotiate with these terrorists. The Galactic Council cannot be seen as weak in the face of such brazen aggression." Xyloth raised a clawed hand, silencing the Asuri diplomat. "I understand your concerns, Counselor, but we must also consider the consequences of escalating this conflict further. The humans have proven themselves to be formidable adversaries, and we risk devastating losses if we resort to open warfare." The Grand Arbiter turned to face the assembled delegates, his expression grave. "We will heed Sergeant Beckett's demand and open negotiations, but make no mistake, the Galactic Council will not tolerate any further acts of hostility from the humans. We must find a resolution, for the sake of our entire civilization." As the chamber erupted into a flurry of protests and heated discussions, Xyloth closed his eyes, his mind racing. The humans had forced the galactic powers into an impossible position. Now the fate of the entire galaxy hung in the balance. The Galactic Council chambers were tense and silent, as Grand Arbiter Tyloth faced off against General Michael Johnson, the human military commander. The air crackled with a palpable sense of unease as the assembled ambassadors watched the two leaders carefully, their expressions a mix of apprehension and anticipation. Xyloth's deep, rumbling voice cut through the stillness. "General Johnson, I must say, your soldiers have certainly caught our attention. Seizing control of one of our most advanced warships is no small feat." Johnson's gaze was steady, his posture relaxed yet alert. "Grand Arbiter, I'm glad we have this opportunity to speak. As you can imagine, the human government and military are concerned about the unprovoked aggression of your forces against our homeworld." The Krellin ambassador, his reptilian features twisted in a scowl, slammed his fist on the table. "Unprovoked. Your kind attacked and destroyed one of our diplomatic vessels." Johnson raised a placating hand. "Ambassador, I understand your outrage, but I can assure you that the humans had no involvement in that incident. Our investigation has revealed that the attack was the work of a third party, likely seeking to stoke tensions between our civilizations." Xyloth's eyes narrowed. If that is true, General, then why have your forces retaliated with such ferocity? Surely you must have realized the consequences of your actions. We did not initiate this conflict, Grand Arbiter, Johnson replied, his voice firm. Your expeditionary force launched a full-scale assault on our homeworld, threatening the lives of our citizens and the stability of our society. We had no choice but to defend ourselves. The Aseri diplomat, Counselor Tayana, leaned forward, her expression troubled. General, surely you must understand the gravity of your people's actions. Seizing control of one of our warships is an act of war, one that the Galactic Council cannot ignore. Johnson met her gaze evenly. Counselor, I assure you that was not our intent. Sergeant Beckett and his team acted to prevent the further loss of life on both sides. They hoped to create an opportunity for dialogue, to find a peaceful resolution to this conflict. Xyloth's clawed hand raised, silencing the murmurs of dissent. Very well, General. If what you say is true, then we are willing to hear your terms for a ceasefire and negotiations. The Krellin ambassador's scales flared in outrage. Grand Arbiter, you cannot be serious. These humans have shown their true colors. They are nothing but savages, unfit to. Xyloth fixed the Krellin with a withering stare. Enough, Ambassador. The Galactic Council will hear the humans' demands. Johnson took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping the room. Grand Arbiter, Counselors, on behalf of the government and people of Earth, we have 3 primary requests. First, we demand the immediate and unconditional withdrawal of all galactic forces from our home system. Any continued aggression will be met with the full force of our military. Second, we require substantial reparations for the damage and loss of life caused by your invasion. These funds will be used to aid the recovery and rebuilding of our affected communities. And finally, we insist on a permanent seat on the Galactic Council, with full rights and responsibilities. Humanity has proven its ability to stand as an equal among the galactic powers, and we will no longer accept being relegated to the margins of your civilization. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of protests and angry shouts, but Xyloth raised a clawed hand, silencing the din. General Johnson, your demands are substantial. Granting a primitive species like yours a seat on the Galactic Council is unprecedented. Can you truly expect us to agree to such terms? Johnson's expression hardened. Grand Arbiter, I think you and your colleagues have learned by now that humanity is far from primitive. We have proven our capabilities, both in combat and in diplomacy. And we will not back down until our rightful place in the galactic community is secured. Xyloth held the human's gaze, his reptilian features unreadable. Finally, he let out a deep, rumbling sigh. Very well, General. The Galactic Council will accept your terms. The chamber erupted into stunned silence as the assembled ambassadors stared at their leader in disbelief. Xyloth raised a clawed hand, quelling the impending uproar. It is clear that we have gravely underestimated the humans. To refuse their demands now would only invite further conflict, one that we cannot afford. We must accept their conditions and welcome Earth as a new member of the Galactic Council. As the galactic delegates descended into heated discussions, Johnson allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. The humans had won the day, and their future in the galaxy was forever changed. Now, the real work began, forging a new path, one where Earth stood as an equal among the stars. General Michael Johnson stood at the podium, addressing the gathered crowd of journalists and diplomats, his expression a mix of pride and grim determination. Behind him, the towering angular silhouettes of galactic warships hung in the sky, a visible reminder of the dramatic events that had unfolded. Today, we mark a new chapter in the history of humanity, Johnson began, his voice resonating through the auditorium. For the first time, the world's nations have come together, not just to defend our homeworld, but to secure our rightful place among the galactic powers. A swell of applause rippled through the audience, and Johnson raised a hand, silencing them. Make no mistake, this was no easy victory. The Galactic Council did not surrender their long-held dominance without a fight, but through the skill, courage, and sheer determination of our armed forces, especially the elite operatives of the Special Air Service, we have proven that humanity is a force to be reckoned with. He paused, his gaze sweeping the crowd. The galactic powers have learned a hard lesson. Never again will they underestimate the tenacity and combat prowess of the human spirit. In the Galactic Council chambers, the atmosphere was tense and somber. Grand Arbiter Tyloth addressed the assembled ambassadors, his reptilian features etched with a rare expression of concern. My friends, the events that have unfolded are indeed a humbling experience for us all. We have long prided ourselves on our technological superiority and our ability to shape the destiny of the galaxy. But the humans have shown us that there is more to power than mere might and resources. Tyloth paused, his clawed hand tracing the outlines of the holographic display that showcased the newly established Galactic Human Accords. The humans have earned their place at our table, not through concessions or appeasement, but through their sheer determination and the skill of their warriors. They have shown us that they are willing to fight, to sacrifice, to protect their interests with an unwavering resolve. The Krellin ambassador, his scales still flaring with barely contained fury, leaned forward, his reptilian eyes narrowed. And what of the threat they pose? Surely we cannot simply welcome them into our ranks, after all the damage they have inflicted upon us. Tyloth fixed the Krellin with a steely gaze. Ambassador, I understand your concerns, but we must adapt to this new reality. The humans have demonstrated that they are not to be trifled with. Any further aggression on our part would only invite more conflict and potentially the destruction of our entire civilization. Counselor Tayana, the Asari diplomat, spoke up, her voice laced with apprehension. Grand Arbiter, you cannot be suggesting that we simply surrender to these warrior scholars. Humanity's place in the galactic order must be carefully managed, lest they upset the delicate balance we've maintained for millennia. Tyloth raised a clawed hand, silencing the Asari. Counselor, I assure you that we will not be surrendering anything. The humans have earned their seat at our table, and we must now learn to work alongside them, to harness their capabilities for the betterment of the entire galactic community. He turned his gaze to the assembled delegates, his expression stern. Make no mistake, the humans are a force to be reckoned with. Their elite special forces, their adaptability, their sheer tenacity. These are qualities that we cannot afford to ignore. From this day forward, we must ensure that humanity is treated as an equal, not as a client or a subject race. The Krellin ambassador snorted derisively. And what guarantee do we have that the humans will not simply use their newfound power to further their own interests at the expense of the galactic order? Tyloth's eyes narrowed. We have no such guarantees, Ambassador, but we must take that risk, for the alternative is far worse. The humans have shown that they will not be cowed, that they will fight to defend their interests with a ferocity that we have never encountered before. He paused, his expression softening ever so slightly. Besides, I believe that in time, we may find that the humans' values and aspirations are not so different from our own. They are a young species, to be sure, but they possess a spirit and determination that we would do well to emulate. As the Galactic Council descended into a flurry of hushed discussions, General Johnson stood tall, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. The battle may have been won, but the true test had only just begun. Humanity had secured its place among the stars, but now the real work of forging a new path, one where Earth stood as an equal among the galactic powers, lay ahead. Johnson allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. The galactic leaders had learned a hard lesson. Never again would they underestimate the tenacity and resolve of the human spirit.